Welcome to my Tankograd42 scenario. This is supposed to be a hypothetical scenario. It probably ends up being more of a fantastical scenario. But the idea behind it is that the German player has accomplished almost all of the goals of Operation Barbarossa by the end of 1941. In the spring of 42, the German player decides to go ahead, push across the Urals, and knock out the last remaining centers of Soviet resistance. Yeah, so I don't know how realistic that is, but it was just something I wanted to try. I thought I'd see what happens if I play on some maps where I've never actually played any Europa stuff before. So it was kind of fun to put it together. And of course, unlike all the historical scenarios that I've done, this was relatively easy in the sense I didn't have to worry too much about the orders of battle or the exact placements of units. The idea was just to pick some units that could maybe possibly have been involved in this, put them in positions, the starting deployment that seemed more or less reasonable. And then after several play tests, I balanced it out. I would add a couple Soviet units, take away some German air power, do various things like that until I thought it was fairly well balanced. So in that sense, as an enjoyable introductory scenario that uses just about everything except the naval parts of my computerized Europa system. It's kind of fun to play. Don't worry too much about whether this situation could ever have actually occurred or not. It's just to put together something to play here in the Urals on different maps with some different units. So the idea is, although I've set it up in what I think is a more or less interesting situation to get started here, as usual, players can move things around any way they want. We can have some free access set up if we want. We can just kind of teleport some units around if we wanted to. We can even we can put them anywhere we want. We can go over to the Allied side and we can do the same thing. We can move units around, put them anywhere we want. And of course, you can do some other things. If we go, for example, here you can see these hexes start with forts in them. And maybe that's a good idea, maybe not. You can go in here and edit the hex and say, I don't think there should be a fort in that hex. And it'll go away. Or you could put a fort and another hex over here. So yeah, I want one there. And it'll put it there. So you can change that around. If you want to add units, eliminate units, change strength of units, you can do that. I think we can fool around with this a little bit. If we go in here and say, I don't think that rifle brigade should be in the scenario. So we'll just eliminate it. We'll get rid of that. It's gone. We might say, heck, that militia brigade, maybe it should be a little bit stronger. Well, I don't really know if it should be any stronger or not, but if we want to change it, we can do that and make it a little bit stronger. So we can do all these kinds of things to change around the starting deployments, strengths, who's in the replacement pool, and all that sort of thing. Because it is, after all, it's just hypothetical or fantasy, depending on your point of view, and the players can switch it around as they see fit. So what I have is, I think over here, yeah. So I've actually started this scenario over here. We've made it through to the Axis movement phase of the first turn, and some of the movement has already happened. You can see German units have advanced in here, They've just pushed forward. As usual, I don't really care too much about whether that is great generalship. I just want to demonstrate how some of these things work. Now, farther in the south here, haven't done anything, so we'll just grab some guys and see what happens if we move some units here. Let's just take this division up. Oh, can't go in that hex, so we'll go in here. We'll merge those together. And again, this is just to move some units around. Some of them can go in there. We'll do that. And that's the way movement works. That's the same as I've been doing through, gosh, I don't even know how many scenarios I have anymore. 15, 16, I don't know, I've lost track, something like that. But that's the way movement works. So we'll consider that the end of the movement phase, having already done some of that German stuff before I began the demonstration and just having thrown some units in here. So let's go ahead and in that phase, as usual, it reminds us you can't go back from the movement phase. You know, a lot of things you can undo, some things you can go back, some things you can't go back. This is one thing you can't go back. When you're done with movement, you're done. So it reminds you to check your supply situation, take care of various things, but if you're sure you're done, and we are, we'll be done with that phase and we will move immediately into the combat phase. So for combat, starting up here in the north, I could have planned these attacks in advance if I wanted to. That's helpful on a big front, like in my Blitz 41, which is fire in the east. If you start figuring out your attacks in the north, say, and work your way all the way to the south, by the time the combat phase rolls around, you might have forgotten what you're going to do. So you're able to save your planning for each attack as you go along. And then when the combat phase begins, you can utilize that advanced planning or not as you see fit. Here, I didn't bother to do that. So we'll just say, let's attack here, and we will attack from these hexes. We'll initiate the attack, and that brings up the usual screen here where we can see what's going on. So it says what we have is a 3.5 to 1 plus 2 attack. And I could change that. I say, oh, for whatever reason, I don't want to use that division. I'll take him out. Drops it down to a 3.3, take that out, drops it down to a 2.3, so we're watching here as it changes that. And if you're wondering, you know, how are those odds derived? For example, we can see here there is a rough hex in a river and various kinds of things that will affect the calculation of the odds and the mods. We can also click here anytime we want on that estimate, and it shows us unit by unit, hexide by hexide, armor effects, engineer effects where appropriate, all the different kinds of things that go into it, and it will explain exactly how that was derived, how the 3.5 to 1 plus 2 was derived, kind of an audit trail, I guess you could call that. Now, the new thing, I laugh. For better or for worse, after much contemplation, I decided that although ordinarily, as you might expect, the system will roll the die in order to determine the outcome of each attack, perhaps the player will want to decide the outcome without rolling the die. The player might want to say, I want this to be a defender eliminated result for this attack. Now, I really don't know if that's a good idea or not. I've actually found it helpful when I'm testing out some things. I want to see how some things work or how some new code is functioning, and I want to see a specific result. Well, this makes it easy to get that specific result so I can test things out. So if you leave it at roll, you can resolve combat here, and the system will roll the die for you. Or you could say, for example, I want defender eliminated. So here we go, and you get a defender eliminated. In this case, it turned out to be a 4 to 1, roll a 3, and got a +2 on it. So that was going to be a defender eliminated anyway. But by choosing the DE, it took all the chance out of that. Again, I don't know if that's a good idea or not, but it's there for people who want to use it. I probably should set that up as an option that can be turned on and off so people won't be tempted by it. Well, we'll see. Okay, so who's going to advance? Let's just say none of those guys will advance. And these guys will advance, and we'll conduct that advance there. Now we can run down and do another attack. So here we have a 5.4-1 with no die mod. Just for the fun of it, I'm going to say use the Axis commando in this and throw in some extra factors there. That takes it to 5.8. So let's just work my way up here. Maybe I'll go to 9. There we go. That looks pretty good. And this time we'll let the system resolve the combat. We click and we got a defender halved. Darn, I should have selected the DE that time, I guess. All right, so defender halved. We're going to pick the retreat hexes. This indicates that there is an enemy zone of control here and an enemy zone of control here. So the odds are really good that we should be retreating to here. So we'll do that. Who's going to advance? And we'll just say none there and none there. And we'll advance those guys in. And so there we had an attack. And if we scroll on down to here, this might be a really bad attack. Let's find out. 1.6-1 with a -3. Probably not the best attack that anyone has ever conducted. But on the other hand, if I want to, I go in here and call it a defender retreat and do that and get my audit trail here that shows me everything that happened. We won't bother to look at that. Retreat. Here we go. Conduct the advance. We'll say everybody advances. So we had a defender retreat. We did the retreat. We did the advance. Let's see what's happening over here. We'll attack from here, here, and here. And 5.5-1. Let's just roll for that. I haven't done any air-to-air combat. So the Soviets have 5 points available. Yeah, notice this is my stripped-down air system. It just uses points. It's way, way less complicated and also way, way faster than playing the standard Europa air system, which I have absolutely nothing against that air system. I just decided I wanted to use something a lot easier and faster in my computerized scenario. So we'll resolve this. And among other things, it now tells us what happened in the resolution of air combat. And we ended up 5-1, defender limb. So they are all gone, and we will just skip the advance. We won't even bother to do an advance there. So I think that ends all the combat that can be done for the first Axis turn in the game. Let's click over here to end the combat phase. Once again, this is a point at which we can't go back. If we say we're going to end the phase, this phase is over. But we'll go ahead and do that. Now, it removed a fort. It's because the Allies advanced into a hex that had a fort in it, I believe. And now we're in the exploitation phase. And let's go up here, see if there's anybody who needs to move, so we can do this. We can see here as we are expending movement points, movement factors, and we'll go on into there. So there we have some exploitation, but enough of that. We won't bother to do any more exploitation. I want to end the player turn, and again, it's going to warn us, okay, you're going to end it now. It's all over. We can say, oh, never mind, and we can keep going, or we really can end it. And this will naturally take us over to the Allied player turn of the first game turn, May 1, 1942. Weather is still clear. We see basic information about air factor, rail cap, sea transportation capacity, air transportation capacity, all those kinds of things, which we can look up anytime we want. But this is a quick reminder at the beginning of the player turn. So we'll close that. Reinforcements. So there are a bunch of new supplies that arrive. This is using my experimental supply system that involves depots and supply points and expenditure of supply points for various things, including when units attack. And these ground units show up as reinforcements. And it's a little bit difficult to see. Let's run this over here a little bit so now we can see the red circle shows up. All of these are appearing in that hex where the red circle is. So those are reinforcements. That's part of the balancing of this hypothetical scenario when I was trying to decide how many units should the Soviets get as reinforcements. They tend to take quite a few losses in the first turn or two, so I decided, well, I'll bring in some reinforcements to try to balance this out. All right, so that's just telling us that they are arriving here. So we'll continue. Special replacements. This is another non-standard part of my system. Special replacements work a little bit differently here, and this is telling me that there are some special replacements, and they are showing up on the map. And you can see as the red circles show up, that's where they are arriving. Those others are farther south, and you can't see them right now. All right, so those guys are showing up, and those are basically the remnants of eliminated units. Special replacement points that normally would have gone into a general replacement pool instead show up as these small remnants of units, what's left of a destroyed division, for example, and they show up in a more or less random hex in or near the supply depot to which the unit was attached. Again, a non-standard way of doing it. I don't know if it's better, worse, or just the same, but I kind of like it. So that's the way I play it. All right, so we will end special replacements. There's really nothing we can do there. That's just informational. And now we come to the regular replacement phase, and we can see that the Soviets have 3 infantry RPs and 3 armor RPs. So we have 3 different things we can do. We could resurrect units from the replacement pool, the dead pile. If there are cadres on the map, we could rebuild them. And then we also have, in some cases, in my slightly twisted rules here, it is possible that a unit could lose some of its strength without being eliminated and without going all the way down to cadre. And so this third option of restore gives us the ability to replace that missing strength to bring a unit back up to full strength, even though it didn't go all the way down to cadre strength. Well, let's look at resurrection here first. And we can see with those 3 infantry points and 3 armor points, these are the units that are available to rebuild. So we have a cavalry division, some tank brigades, and some miscellaneous other things that either started the game in the replacement pool or were eliminated by the Axis attacks in the Axis player turn of the first game turn. So let's just go ahead and say we will grab this one and this one, and I think that's going to do it, right? 3 and 3. So this costs 3 infantry, this costs 3 armor. So that's it. If we tried to take more units than we have the RPs available, it would tell us we can't do that, and we have to go back and change it. But I think this is the right numbers here. All right, yeah. So we resurrected those 2 units, and they actually showed up over here, I believe. Yeah. Now we use up all the RPs, both infantry and armor. They're none remaining, so we can't do anything else here. So we'll move on to in the replacement phase. Once again, reminding us we can't go back. Supply determination. This is the standard thing that happens in my experimental supply system. and it's checking things. We found 2 Axis units that were out of supply because they had moved beyond their supply leash from their depot. Allied units have 8 marked out of supply. All right, so we'll close that. Get more this is more information because the depot supplying a number of units, the depot did not have sufficient supply points. So the system randomly chose some of the units drawing supply from that depot and marked those units out of supply. Again, that's just a quirk of my experimental supply rules. So we'll say goodbye to that. We'll confirm and complete this. This is, by the way, showing us where some of these out of supply units are. I'm not going to worry about that right now. Here's the complete supply report. Everything you need to know for both sides. You could study that if you want to. We're not going to worry about it right now. We're going to go straight in to the movement phase over here. And just to give you an idea what the situation is, this Axis stack probably never should have been here. I think the Soviet setup was not very good. As I have mentioned for the other scenarios, divisions for both sides go into what would be the historical hex, in this case what I consider the historical hex for them. Non-divisional units get spread around according to the core army or army group to which they're attached, and so on. So this situation, and what did I do? Did I call that one a DE intentionally? Whatever I did, I think I made it too easy for these guys to run up here adjacent to Sverdlovsk, but we won't worry about that, and we'll just see if we can find any counterattacks here. It doesn't look good anyplace, so we'll just try to run up some defenses here. Merge these into here. And we've got some guys here. We do have some rail cap, so let's rail up a couple of rifle divisions by operational rail movement. So I have to click along here. And we'll merge them into here. It's warning us there's going to be an overstack there. That's okay. We can deal with that. Here we'll say none, and we'll take a couple of these that were already there. Oop, I'm still in op rail. I want to go to ground. Move them into there. And move some more guys here. We can probably do admin movement and run them up someplace. We can watch over here as the movement points are clicking away. Yeah, we'll just leave them there. We'll retreat this guy. Call it good there. All right, you notice I was just clicking along. I knew the system would stop me when I had used up too many MPs. It's, I don't have to worry about it. The system keeps track of them. I just kind of move toward where I want to go, and it will stop me. Here, we'll bring some guys up, merge them into there. And that's about it. That's about as far as I'm going to go here. It gives you an idea of the hypothetical scenario, which you can balance out as you see fit by adding units to either or both sides, eliminating units from either or both sides, strengthening or weakening or both units from both sides, redeploying as you see fit, and doing all those kinds of things for this hypothetical fantasy scenario of Tankograd42. So that's about it. I hope that served as a useful demonstration of what I was trying to accomplish here. Whether it's worth anything or not, I'll leave it to you to make that decision. Thanks for watching. Take care. Have fun with your Europa gaming.